Hello, everybody. I hope by now that you all know that the foundation has set up a COVID relief fund in order to support thousands of union performers who are going through tough times. This year and a bit, thanks to your donations, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in emergency aid to more than 7,000 performers and their families. If you are a SAG-AFTRA member and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you so much for your support. Now, without further ado, one thing I do want to say is, I'd love you to, if you learn something this evening or you pick up a useful piece of information or advice, I'd love to have you share it on your social media. We're happy to amplify your tweets about things you've learned. So while I'm encouraging people to do that, if you don't want to be in somebody else's photo, then please turn off your camera. We're just going to assume that if your camera's on, you don't mind if you appear in someone else's screenshot. Okay, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Ross Grossman, who is the owner of Affinity Artists Agency. Ross, thank you for joining us this evening. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Great, okay. I wonder if we can just start off by, can you give us like a rundown of your bio? How did you get to this position of success that you currently find yourself in?
Well, how far back do you want me to go? I was a child actor in Chicago. I was working with David Mamet. For anybody who's, above a certain age, we'll know who David Mamet is in Chicago. I was a stage actor. So just early on, I knew, from the time I was in the Tom Thumb acting school, at the age of like 10 or 9. And I just had the bug, and I do believe it's a bug. I think it's a disease that you can't shake. But I basically went through a whole series of plays and things like that as a kid, came to California, and essentially had to step away for a little bit from that and figure out what I was going to do for a living, and because, at that time I was not a film or television actor. And went back to school and got my bachelor's, decided to become a filmmaker. So I got my BFA in film at UCLA. Thought I was going to be the next Spielberg, but I was in my early 20s and doggone it, I didn't know what I wanted to write. I just knew I wanted to be famous and that kind of stuff. But again, it took a little time to figure out what I wanted to do, figured out I'd get a little more background and something where I could actually pay my rent and eat more than macaroni and cheese and hot dogs. So I went back to school, got my master's in clinical psychology, and then went down that path for a significant amount of time. And at the same time doing stand-up comedy at night, while I was helping people with their problems during the day, I was expressing my own neuroses at night. And I couldn't burn the candle at both ends. And at some point I gave in and just focused on psychology for a while. But then, early midlife crisis, and I thought, I still want to be involved in the entertainment industry. So I decided, I'm going to learn how to be an agent because, maybe I'm not going to get over that mountain, but I can help get you over that mountain. So that was my next step. And that was in 1998 in San Francisco. I opened up an agent, Affinity Artists, and we were also known as Affinity Models at that point because in San Francisco, you really do need to have both. You need to cover everything because it's a small pond as far as, opportunities. So commercials, modeling, print, and film and television. And very shortly, around 2000, 2001, I realized the economy was not doing so great and commercials and print and all that took a dive, and I knew eventually I'd have to get to LA. And so I brought the whole operation out to LA, got in a U-Haul, uplifted my root, pulled my roots out of the ground and just came over and set up shop, had a brief stint at Abrams Artists, worked there for a little bit, and then set up my own shingle in around 2001. And then 9/11 happened. And then so it's taken a while, but we built up for a while. We have reps in New York that are representing us through the LA office. And we have reps in LA. and here we are. And so we've had multiple series regulars, as well as guest stars, co-stars, and people in feature films. We have series leads, and so here we are.
That's amazing that you reference, it's 20 years ago that you started and it was another crisis, and now 20 years later we're experiencing another one. So before we get into the nitty gritty, and I really want to get into the nitty gritty of the details for the audience this evening, I do just want to ask you how the business has changed for you over the last year.
Well, obviously during the heart of the pandemic, it was, I almost didn't even have to open my computer. It was dismal. We had a couple of things where people wanted people who were at home and on Zoom for little dramas that involved people during the pandemic. But it was extremely quiet. And then towards, late 2020 and into 21, things started to pick up dramatically. And in fact, we've been busier at this time than pre-pandemic.
That's fascinating. And is that because there were all of these projects set and ready to go?
I think it may be a confluence of backed up projects, pilot season. But there's another element that really, I think, made a huge difference. And that is that because casting directors, due to the pandemic, are not using a physical office to see talent, it has become a boom and a boon to actors who normally might not have gotten in the room because they only had 20, 30 slots in a day for a role. But now, thanks to the blessings of the internet, many more people can be seen. There's less handshaking and introductions and, oh, I went to the same school as you did. I mean, it's a straight on, let's see the video.
Yeah.
And so I think that saves them a lot of time. And it certainly has saved a lot of actors a lot of time and effort. And I would say that it has increased dramatically. Now that could also be that's due to the financial, beating that people took during the pandemic, that some of the other agencies may not have made it through to the other side. And that may also have increased our odds, but for our talent.
Silver linings.
Silver linings, exactly. Silver linings. But I would say, I'm certainly not happy there was a pandemic, but I will say it has had some accidental dividends for our actors. Yeah.
So I want to get into sort of the submission process. If an actor, I'm sure we have lots of unrepresented actors with us this evening. If an actor wants to submit their materials to you for consideration for representation, what does a good submission consist of? Well, for me, and by the way, this is way before the pandemic, I'm very much into efficiency. And to me, it's the speed of the internet. I'm happy to never receive another paper submission ever again. I'm not saying you shouldn't have that ready, but and have your pictures ready, but I would say everything should be ready electronically. And I'll give you a couple of pet peeves to let you know what you shouldn't do. For my agency personally, I dislike it when someone writes to me and asks me how to send. First of all, it's on my website. But secondly, you've just wasted that email. You could have had your stuff attached. It's no skin off of anyone to have a link to your website and to your reel. So I understand people are trying to be polite and do the right thing, but there's no offense in my mind to having all of that in your email. Yeah. Saying, please let me know your process. However, it's all here if you'd like to look at it. And so for me, that's more efficient than answering emails saying how to do it. Right. Get it to me in your first email. The other thing I want to acknowledge also is that agencies get so busy that sometimes an email was sent by you and they didn't see it. I hate to admit that, but
it gets really swamped. And then that email just scrolls down as the other ones come in. And so sometimes without stalking, being a little tenacious might be helpful. Not 2 days later or a week later, but coming back around a couple months later, if you haven't heard anything, might be useful, because literally sometimes they never opened your email, or it got lost. Or
I think that's a good reminder not to take it personally, because everybody's busy and emails do fall through the cracks. So
true. So a great submission will just, again, life story is lovely, but because of our time constraints, the dream you had as a child, which I think is wonderful, don't need to give that. Don't need to tell us about the long journey. I would say also, you might benefit from not talking about every malady that you've suffered through. Some people think that that's a plus. I personally think it's better to just cut to the chase. Yeah. So saying all the things you've overcome, maybe other agents will care to hear that, or managers. But for me, it's like, let's get to the point, because I may adore you as a human being, but it won't change my opinion of you aesthetically if you're real and your materials aren't up to snuff. So, our next, the next thing is have your pictures, if possible, pasted into the email so that I don't, and no other agent has to go download your pictures. And downloading anything, I think, is putting yourself behind the eight ball. Making an agent download your video in order to watch it is a mistake. It's just as easy for them to go on to the next email where someone's made it easier for them. So have it either in a link they can click, that's the easiest way, where they can go to another website. Try not to make it password protected. Don't make the agent, who's already overburdened, work harder. Make it easy for them. So a non-password protected link to your video, your reel, all that stuff. Having good materials, and I like to tell people that screaming, crying, running, jumping, falling down, stabbing or being stabbed, shooting or being shot, I call that stunt work. I don't really think of that per se as acting. And I would say avoid that kind of submission, or have plenty of stuff that isn't that, because, I want to see nuance. I want to see layered acting. I don't want to see somebody screaming because someone's stabbing them. That's not interesting to me. It won't help me. In fact, it's almost the opposite. I might go, no, this isn't acting.
Well, that's a great tip.
Resume and text format, preferably within the, also, don't try to send me a PDF that I need to open to look at your resume. Put it in the text of the email, or paste it in as a JPEG or a GIF, and have your phone number in there. And let us know also if you have management, or where you are already represented and where you don't want to be represented. I'll have people write in and say, I'm seeking representation, but they haven't said theatrical or commercial. I would also say, if you don't have a reel at all, there's really no point in sending anything into me. And by reel, I don't mean that you've already been in professional productions. I mean great self-tapes, just anything where I'm seeing the actual product. The product is not your photograph. To me, it's your video. So
I want to just dig a little bit deeper into some of those marketing materials you just mentioned. I love that you gave the tip about the headshots and everything being embedded, and not having to download everything, and not having anything password protected. That's all brilliant advice.
Yeah. And before I forget, ask me about headshots when you have time.
Headshots, that's what I want to come to. Headshots. What do you need to be able to represent your people?
Okay. So, the days of one headshot covering everything, that one magical headshot that covers all the possible roles. No, we don't think so. Your commercial headshot will be good for playing a chipper, upbeat person, and that's about it. It will not cover dramatic, theatrical, comedic, unless you're headshot is hilariously comedic or silly or unusually nerdy or awkward in a good way. I think people try to save money on headshots, and 90% of the time it does not work by getting your friends to shoot you. I strongly encourage people to think about how many amazing, attractive people live in Los Angeles and New York and Chicago, and not just send the photo that says, look at me, I'm a handsome, beautiful actor and that says nothing to me other than, okay, we can maybe have you play a glamorous person who walks through. That's it. That's it. Better to send pictures that show moods and attitudes, the character types that you will be playing. If it's comedic, it can be comedically irritable, comedically frustrated, comedically psychotically happy, whatever it is. We don't want wacky. We don't want jazz hands and wacky headshots, but we want moods and attitudes. Because remember that casting directors are going to be looking at a bank of 2,000 photos per roll, and they're not going to have any emotional connection to you as an individual, and they're going to have to dumb this down into maybe 20, 30, even 40 spots, and the first thing they're going to do is look for someone who has a feeling, a vibration, something that reminds them of the character that they're looking at. So we want you to be able to inhabit various character attitudes, personas, moods. We do want one headshot that could cover some vague territory of pleasant, decent human being. That's fine. But that should not be all. Be very careful with makeup. If you look really made up, it has a clownish effect. And it just looks like we have no idea who you really look like. So if the makeup is really transforming you into another person, we're not going to call you in because we're going to go, this looks like a makeup with a person underneath it. So we want to urge people to try not to alter your appearance too heavily with the makeup and try to look real. And try not to do too many touch-ups, especially as you age, because we need people who look older. And there's too many people trying not to do that. Right. And you're going to get more bang for your buck playing older than you are than being older and trying to play younger than you are. And I have the sad job of telling sometimes often female actors, no, you don't look in your 30s,
Right. I mean, I want to digress for a little bit just because you bring this topic up. Yeah. Often we're asked by older actors, let's just say 40 plus, because I feel like in Hollywood, older actors is 40 plus. Are you seeing more work for actors in their 50s, 60s, 70s, or?
I get some great opportunities in that age range, possibly because also I do, while I definitely, absolutely, we want series leads, we want, feature leads, we are not in any way, shortchanging anybody on getting co-stars, guest stars, recurring, and the more established actors who've been around a long time and who are now older, they're not going to take those smaller roles, most of them. And so that's a really great opportunity for somebody who's sort of in development, who's in their 50s and 60s and 70s. Absolutely.
Okay, that's great. That's great to know. Talking about headshots, I don't know if you want to recommend anyone, but do you have a stable of photographers that you do recommend to your clients?
We have we've done polls of our own talent, the ones that because we pulled them in because we liked their headshots. And yeah, we do have lists of people that we think are better.
And then reels. You talked about reels. Correct me if I'm wrong, you said that even if someone has a self-tape that they've put together, that's okay to put on a reel if it's going to show you their performance agility. Is that correct?
Put it as a separate clip. There's a big push towards clips. The reason clips are better is you might have a clip playing a real sad sack and another one where you're really confident. And the role's for a confident guy, and I don't want them to see you the other way.
Right.
And I don't want them to slog through that. I want them to go straight to, and again, part of it is the volume that casting directors have to deal with. I want them I want this to be an easy thing for them. So I don't want them to get confused and wonder if you can do something. I want them to go right to that laser beam. This is the clip that matches the character that you're seeking. I would say yes, if you got self-tapes, I might put them together on one reel of self-tapes or a reel of or just some separate clips. If you don't have any actual productions that you were in and that you can use for your reel. But the hard and fast rules of Hollywood, I think of them as guidelines. This idea that you can't have I've gotten people off of iPhone auditions. I've gotten them roles. I've gotten people. Now, I mean, we have preferences, but the truth is, if someone's amazingly talented, they're gonna get what they're gonna get. They're gonna get in.
That's good to know. It'll shine through. Websites. You talked a little bit about websites. How important is it for an actor to have a website, and what should be on their website?
I don't have a very strong opinion about that. I think it's great to have a website. I think it's a good place to have all of your materials when you're marketing yourself. But as an agent, we really don't refer people to anyone's website. That's not how we operate. We go off the big submission sites and our own email, and we'll use their Actors Access or LA Casting or Casting Networks materials, because we can send that off in a marketing package.
Do you have a press kit for your clients, or do you encourage them to put such things together?
When we really have a client on the rise in a big way, and we really have some meat that we can use. In particular, I have a talent who had been in multiple films, had made some good guest stars in some shows, and then is now a series lead. He's on a Nickelodeon show, Drama Club. Chase Faulkner, for those of you who want to look him up on IMDb. We will then take their materials and possibly try to market them further to get bigger roles. But normally we are not that would be more of a manager's job. Right,
okay. And then you said earlier that you maybe have an office in New York, or you're covering people in New York. Can you tell me how many people are working with you at your agency, and how many clients do you have on your roster between New York, LA, nationwide?
Well, it's kind of one of those company trade secrets.
Okay.
I will tell you that actors ask me this question almost regularly, and I say to them, look, if you're 25 and you're asking me how many actors I rep, does it really matter if I'm representing 20 women over 50 to you? Does that really affect how I'm marketing you? I think that the more relevant question is, how many people am I representing that are directly competitive with you? Because not if I represent 200 actors, they're not all going to be submitted on the same roles. So we're trying to get people of every ethnicity and age group, and what else is there? Comedic and dramatic, and so there's not very much overlap in the kinds of talent that we decide to represent. We're always looking for who we're not representing.
Yeah.
To be our next choice. But in New York, we have 2 reps, and again, they're LA office, but they're in New York, seeking talent to help us submit in New York. And we have 2 in LA.
That's great.
So you'd call us a boutique agency.
So my next question, actually, Nancy Fassett just asked, my next question was going to be, you talked about pilot season and how things are really busy now. Is there a preferred time of year? Are there better times of the year to submit to you? Is it still true that there are, I think historically May seemed to be a great time where people were
so pilot season is winding down at that point. For me, honestly, it's the holidays and the times when I don't have to do my regular job of just being in the thick of it. It's when I have a really stretch of time where it's a little slow. So yeah, I would say May, but honestly, even, the Christmas season where, things are slow.
That's great to know. Social media, what advice do you give your clients about their social media platforms?
Oh, just to back up, just to say any time's a good time. I wouldn't say limit your submissions to those times of year. Just, it might be better. Okay. I'm sorry, the new question is? Yeah,
social media. I'm wondering if you give any of your clients particular advice about their social media platforms.
Social media. Well, I would say to everyone, don't say anything in social media that you wouldn't say in front of a judge. That's my strong advice is be very, very cautious about how you present to the public. And, don't go for the easy, attack on people and all that kind of stuff, because it's going to come back at you. But I don't have any advice in terms of particular content. I do know that some actors try to direct me to their Instagram to look at their videos and stuff. And it seems at times it's kind of a hassle, because that means I've got to open up my Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And I'd just rather get the link directly. I don't invite actors to meet with me on social media because I generally use my social media for the next level up. I'm connecting with casting and other people on social media.
Got it. And Sierra Scott is asking, when you're considering a new client, do you look at their social media following to see how many people are following them? Is that part of your consideration when you take on a new client?
A little bit. In that if someone has several million, that's significant, or even 500,000, that's significant, because casting and Hollywood are starting to see those are eyeballs and those are ticket sales. It's like in the old days when you were a band, or even today, a band, when they want to book a nightclub, the nightclub often, when they're beginning bands, says, well, how many can you bring? I think it's kind of like that now. It's like, who are you bringing? How are you going to fill our club up? And they make decisions on bands based on their following, Mm-hmm. So that email list, which is now your followers, that is potential ticket sales. That's something you can say to a sponsor, hey, Tide or Coca-Cola, there's 2 million people following this person. They're going to be in the show.
Yeah.
So it's just basic math. It's now, if they can't act, or they're not very skilled in acting, it kind of, yeah, you want to be in a host, you want to be in a reality show, but I don't do reality shows. So as far as acting, I'm still kind of an elitist in saying, no, your acting comes first.
Great. Let's say you've looked at somebody's submission materials, they're of interest to you for whatever reason, you call them in for an interview. What makes an interview with an actor good?
Number one, they look like their materials. That's number one. They appear relatively stable. There isn't a lot other than, it's really yours to lose. By the time I'm doing an interview, I've already pretty much decided that I do or don't want. I really wouldn't set up an interview unless I'm already have made my decision about whether they're representable. And my marker, or my sort of measurement stick is can I see this person as a lead? Do I think they could carry a show, or they could be one of the leads in a show? I don't care if they have 0 credits. Do I think they have the potential? Do they have that skill, charisma, something special about them where I go, yeah, I think this person would be a lead? And it's just my opinion, but that's my compass, is that gut feeling. Does this person have that? And it's not just a picture, that's the video that convinces me. So by that point, the interview is really just kind of a meet and greet, and it's just a chance to show me that you're not insane and that you're stable and that you understand the business somewhat, and that if there is a problem or you're just, I can see your potential, but I definitely see you need polishing, it's going to be your ability to hear some advice and some guidance and to eventually follow that advice. Because I do have people who say, yeah, that sounds great, and then they don't do it. And then they kind of treat their career like a hobby and not like a career. And then that's how I have to treat it.
Right. I do have some questions from some actors that they emailed them in this week. So I'm going to go to those questions that were emailed in earlier this week. So this is the part where I apologize to everybody in advance for mispronouncing any names. So Monique Jeleno-Schweinman says, if we have a scene with a celebrity, should that go first in our reel to distinguish that we can hold our own with named talent, or should our strongest acting scene go first?
Depending on the weakness of your role in that scene with the celebrity, or the name actor, that would be the judgment call. If you're playing, foot soldier number 12 and, say, yes, sir, and you walk out and it's Al Pacino, not so thrilled with that.
Yeah, make that second. Okay, that's great. She also asks, I think we might have covered this. Are there still more opportune times to reach out to agents and managers for representation, or with many projects casting year round due to streaming services, does that not matter much anymore?
Yeah, no, they can submit anytime.
But I'm wondering, because she mentions the streamers, sort of what impact have they made on your business?
Are you talking about Netflix and Hulu?
And Amazon?
It's been nothing but good for business. It's only good for business. It's been amazing for business.
That's great. That's great to know. Sherry Marie Carruthers is asking, how might we arrange an audition or interview for theatrical representation with Ross?
Essentially sending an email with reel, link to reel, and photographs, and resume.
And that information's on your website.
On the website.
Great. So this question from Randy Oppenheimer says he has 20 indie films on his belt, a decent reel, great headshots. He has an agent and a manager for theatrical and commercial. He knows that he's a pretty good actor, and yet he still gets very few auditions. He's taken casting director workshops and he's been in class for years. That's
hard. And a couple things first, just a note on our last question. Often agents don't have the time to say no to someone. And I know that's hard. Sometimes actors want an explanation. We don't have time for it. And so sometimes it feels like being ghosted because we just don't respond. So I just want to put that out there as well, that it's sometimes we're literally, until we go to sleep at night, we're working. And so we just sometimes don't have the time, the bandwidth to answer every email when the answer is no.
Absolutely.
So coming back to, now I've lost my place on the current question. The current question is, why is this person getting auditions? That is the magic $20,000 question. I get actors, and I generally don't bring anybody into my agency that I don't kind of fall in love with, just in love with their talent, and who I don't go, oh my God, this person has it. And then Hollywood doesn't respond. And every time I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong with people? So if I knew that, that would be the magic formula. I don't know why, other than that the roles being written at that time, if in fact the actor's estimation of their own talent is how the industry sees their talent, but then it comes down to type, and it comes down to how many people are of that type. If you're 20 to 29, there's a lot of competition. It's a lot of competition. If you're Caucasian and you're 20 to 29, there's a lot of competition. It does sometimes come down to whether or not your skill level and your talent are, recognized by people, and ultimately other people are the arbiters. It's kind of like a stand-up comic who says he's funny, but nobody's laughing.
Yeah.
The funniness is in the audience response. So I would say, talk to respected teachers, ask them if there's something missing from the performance, ask them to look at your reels. Talk to managers, ask them if they're not going to accept you, why not? But that's usually, for me, the reason that I don't bring somebody on who says they've been in this and that, is that their training isn't as deep as they believe it is. And I'll see a performance and I'll go, that's okay for a co-star, but that's not going to carry a lead. There's no nuance there. That's a one-note performance. We're looking for complexity and nuance and a sense that we're discovering something. When someone's acting, we want a feeling that we're discovering something partially hidden, even though it's the actor's art that's making it appear that there's something partially hidden. There's this, when you see somebody playing, for example, angry, and whatever they're doing physically and visually is angry, there's no subtext. There's no nuance. There's no complexity. We're just saying, I'm angry, and he's acting angry. So there's nothing to discover. And I don't know how to do that. If I did, I'd be an actor, but I know it when I see it. And so it's people thinking, oftentimes what I'll also see is people have been in a lot of plays, but they haven't really dug in on the training. And so they think the volume of their work speaks to their skill level. And it's not always true. And also, stage acting and film acting are so diametrically opposed in terms of broad and subtle. So those are some of the considerations that I have. But some of it is just completely unfair. Let's be honest. There's no fair. I mean, if we lived in that world, it would be wonderful. If it was fairness, if it was a meritocracy. It's not always based on merit and talent. I'm sure all of you have seen musicians at a local place and go, my God, they're amazing. Why aren't they on the radio? It's not fair. And there are only so many musical chairs in this musical chair game. And sometimes someone doesn't hit for years. I've had actors who out of the gate, first week in representation, we got them out for auditioning. I've had actors, sadly, who've, years worth of auditions, and I've continued to have faith. I mean, years worth of attempts to get them auditions. And then finally, during the pandemic, they hit. People, I don't ask me why, but
Yeah, Paul Racy is my hero right now, talking about this kind of thing. The gentleman who's up for supporting actor in The Sound of Metal, who's been in LA and plays, for many, many years, and suddenly he's having this big success with this perfect role for him.
Jenna Fisher from The Office, if you've read her book. 10 years kicking around town. George Clooney, I believe, was kicking around town for 10 years before he got his break. But I will say that casting directors, if they tell you they like you, and I do strongly recommend those casting directors workshops, because I have seen a real sort of the short line, the express line, because the casting director kind of emotionally adopts people and goes, I like them. I wish I had something from them right now. But as long as the agent and manager are pushing them into the audition requests, they do remember people that they like, and they try to bring them back. So the best way to get that emotional connection, in my opinion, with that casting director is going to be to get to those workshops, because what are there, 20, 40 people sometimes? That's not a bank of 2,000. And those are real flesh and blood people, and you get a hit off of them. And that, I think, is the shortest method that I know how of getting them to really pay attention to you just a little bit more.
And I just want to point out to our audience that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation does have a casting access program, which offers free casting director workshops. So if you don't belong to that program, there's a little application process. I encourage you all to take part. Megan Drust is asking, do you take talent in Atlanta?
I will take talent anywhere in the United States as long as they can find a way to be a local LA resident, or simply try to push them on the Atlanta projects. But I do know that a lot of productions want locals. Unless it's a series lead, they'll work on the travel and the lodging. But if it's a co-star, it's very unlikely anybody's going to bring somebody on who isn't a local resident, because of the fees and the travel and the lodging that is required if you're going to bring a SAG actor from another city and state. So that person has to find a way to have a local LA residence, even if they're living in Atlanta at that moment.
So we have a couple of questions in the chat. Nancy and Max are asking about managers. Do you prefer to take clients on when they already have a manager, or do you have managers that you like to work with, so you send your clients to them? What is your preference in terms of actors coming to you already with a manager?
I think a great manager and agent relationship is like a very amicably divorced couple who share a child that they both love, and they're both doing their own thing. Maybe they're both working on college applications, but if the end result is for that talent. And so in that metaphor, the parents, but that means, it's a double-barreled approach. Manager submitting, agent submitting, it's great. Where it gets dicey is when the agent refers a talent to a manager, and then the manager finds a new agent for the talent. Or the manager sends someone to an agent, says, we like that guy, and then the agent goes, what are you doing with that manager? Go over here. And sometimes it happens, neither one of them, one of them gets the person a job on a production. The casting director says, hey, this other agent's interested in you, or this other manager's interested in you, and they called me and I just want to let you know. So sometimes the problem is when you're successful, that's when people are saying, okay, time to leave. But it doesn't hurt to have a good manager and an agent at the same time. The only way it hurts is that you're getting percentages pulled on both sides, but 10% of nothing is nothing. So if they're getting you work, it's worth it.
Exactly. Tara Lynn is asking, do you have experience representing performers with disabilities? And what has your experience been when it comes to casting and representation of disability?
We certainly see a lot of castings for disability. I have represented at various times certain actors. Again, it's number one is the acting talent. It's not the disability or the health. The number one priority for us is the talent. If you're a good actor, God bless you, we're interested in you. But it's just got to be the talent. And absolutely, we see at least 1, 2, 3 castings a day where a disabled actor is preferred for a role.
I have a question that will make sense. Leslie Middlebrook is asking, I think she's a New York actress, and she's asking, in terms of volume, does it make sense right now when there's so much more happening in New York for a successful New York actor to relocate to Los Angeles?
Well, I guess the operative term here is successful. If you're a guest star or higher, then you're going to be a commodity in LA or New York. There's a strong possibility either way. Although, again, I'm seeing, especially because of the pandemic, I'm seeing so many casting directors really harping on and pushing on, this has to be a New York local, or this has to be an LA local. They're really pushing hard on that. I think partly because of all the requirements with COVID and vaccines and pandemic, and hopefully that'll be over soon. But there is a big push for local. I will say that I represent people in New York and we submit them on LA projects and vice versa. But I also have to say that I've seen casting directors shy away from anyone they know isn't local. But it's usually on the smaller roles. The bigger roles, that's important enough for them to go, We don't care where they are. We want them.
Right.
So I mean, yes, there is more work in LA. I would say if your strength is procedurals, CSI, and all of those kinds of shows, then I would stick in New York.
That's interesting, because it seems like there are a lot of procedurals also filming in LA.
There are, but I'm saying, all things being equal, if you really favor New York, and you're getting significant roles out there, not just little small roles, then I think you could probably swing it if you get a good LA agent that can probably get you the audition, especially, and I'm hopeful, if we stay with this model of online auditions. Because I think it's tremendous, and I think it's working, and I think it's efficient, and I think it's more democratic. It gives everybody a little more equal footing.
Colbert Alambert is asking, or Colbert perhaps, is asking, what are your thoughts on actors asking for submission reports periodically?
For me, I will gladly do it about once a month if someone wants it. I don't want to do it every week. It starts to feel like I'm getting micromanaged. But once a month, absolutely.
Great. Crystal Ann Taylor is asking if you have heard about productions starting to ask to see whether or not people have been vaccinated.
Whether they've been vaccinated, no. No, I haven't seen much of that. There's definitely COVID pay, and they'll get you vaccinated.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, will they get you vaccinated? No, they'll get you tested, COVID tested.
Right. But we haven't heard about, people needing to be
I
vaccinated.
haven't seen much of that yet.
Okay, that's good to know. Yeah. Carla is saying, if period pieces are our forte, what do you advise?
I mean, yes, there certainly are period pieces. There's right now, there seems to be a lot of fun being had with Mad Men and Mrs. Maisel. Mad Men obviously over, but there's that sort of 60s, 50s, 70s. But if you're talking about the 1600s, or I wouldn't, unless you're doing this as a hobby, I wouldn't, make that your only niche. I definitely try to be versatile and give yourself various looks and reel to cover a little more territory.
March Henry is asking, loving your background, and also asking if you have a memory of a reel or submission that completely blew you away and why.
A reel or submission that completely blew me away. Oh yeah, that happens. It's usually because I'm watching someone whose performance is so not cliche, so I can't see where they're going next. I don't, and it just, I'm swept away, basically. Now, why? If I knew that magic skill, I would teach it and I would use it. But it's usually because I'm riveted the same way you're riveted by, say, a Bengal tiger. They're not predictable, and they're not cliche, and there's something they've been able to manage to appear spontaneous and multi-layered and or comedic. And by the way, we really do try to corner the niche of comedy as well. I'm very much into drama, but we really pride ourselves on our comedy roster. So, or they just make me laugh. So yeah, just that ability to transport me and make me believe. If I'm moved, I believe that I'm made out of the same stuff of most other people, so that if I'm moved, other people are going to be moved. That's my compass, is am I moved emotionally? Does it tickle me? Does it strike me in some way? Do I feel something?
Okay, last question from the chat. Janine Justo is asking, what is the highest count of auditions and callbacks that it took for one client to book a role?
Ooh, to book one role.
Yeah. Have you had any clients that you just hung in there because you knew they were so great, the right role would come along? And
I've seen 4 or 5, and I've seen actors who they said, no, we're not interested. And then, or even more interesting, I've seen casting directors get kicked off a project. They liked someone, new casting directors not interested. Then they went through their whole series of people, and they went back. They didn't want to take the choices. There was an ego thing, right? That's my assumption anyway. They went back to those choices and then auditioned them again, and then finally the person got the role. But I've seen that happen, just politics. You know, we want our fresh new choices because we've been brought in as a fresh new team, right? So that's at least my assumption of what goes on behind the scenes. And so sometimes an actor gets kicked to the curb simply because they were chosen by the wrong person. Yeah, politics.
Yeah.
But I've seen it happen where, yeah, someone goes through, they make all their choices, they're not interested, and they put out the casting again, or they didn't look at them the first time, really. You know. But it's usually not magical, like they hated him the first time. Most of the time, 90% of the time, it's not like, oh, we've magically changed our minds. The talent was always good.
Right.
Just something in the casting changed.
All right. I think we're out of time. I really appreciate the time and energy and expertise you've shared with us. Do you have any last words of advice for the actors who have joined us this evening?
Training. Just, I can't say this enough. There are far too many people, even those who have been able to join the union, who feel they're done. They're done with training. They have everything they need. And in particular, those who have been to a well-respected acting school that's part of a bachelor's or master's degree, I feel sometimes they are not as prepared as they think they are. And I would say, please check out new teachers, different teachers. Don't just stay with one teacher. Try different approaches and train, because I just can't emphasize it enough. There are too many people who think that it's an event and not a process to train.
Yeah. All right, that's great advice. Thank you so much. We have to look for the good teachers wherever we are. Thank you so much for joining us, Ross. I want all of us to give you a warm round of applause here. You'll see everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you for sharing your Friday night with us.
No problem. Take care.